everyone, Ashley Mailloux with the Daily Racing Form on Saturday. There's a big race. A big race might be a little bit of an understatement, though. It's the $20 million Saudi Cup, a big field, a contentious field, top to bottom. Several Japanese runners in the field, as well as White Barrio, the winner of the 2023 Breeders' Cup Classic. National Treasure, fresh off a win in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational, as well as some other big names. So it's a really great rendition of this race, and excited to see what'll happen this Saturday as we look at the time form pace projections here. Not sure I necessarily agree with this picture. Now, talking about the pace complexion, I think the thing that I struggle with is National Treasure really nowhere to be found in that first flight, and I think he's kind of shown that he is a true horse that has that speed and wants to be forwardly placed. We saw that in the Preakness, we saw that more recently in the Pegasus World Cup, but we also saw that in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. So I have a feeling that National Treasure will be put into gear really early in the Saudi Cup. Now we're going to go through this horse by horse, and the order that we're going to go in is not post position, but it's program order, which is alphabetical order. So we're going to kick things off here with Carmel Road, who was a dominant winner last time out. Now, you look at that performance, it was a stakes race. He's gotten obviously a nice resume under him, but it was a dominant win. He won by 7.5. He's really raced well in those last three. Nice to see him return to the winner's circle, because that's the only time he's been in the winner's circle besides his maiden score, which interestingly enough was in California. Was at Del Mar when this one was trained by Bob Baffert. I think my main reservations with him is what are we going to see from him against this level of competition. It's just such a stacked race. Now, Crown Pride is up next. It's a 5-year-old son of Reach the Crown, who this is one of several Japanese runners in this year's edition, and he disappointed last time out. He didn't fire in his last race of his 4-year-old campaign. Prior to that, though, in that Group 3 event in Korea, dominant winner, faced 13 other rivals and won by 10 lengths. And you can see last year they used this race. He raced well enough that he ended up going to the Dubai World Cup, where he also finished 5th in those races. So I have a feeling hopefully we'll see Crown Pride in this race, and then later in Maidan. Defunded is up next for Bob Baffert. Was second last time out in the Grade 1 Awesome again. We'll take a look at this performance. It was really nice to see. Now, he doesn't win, but he had 2 back-to-back really dull efforts. We saw that in the San Diego Handicap and in the Pacific Classic. And to see him rebound, he sort of needed to prove himself, and he did. Second best behind Slow Down Andy. I thought it was a good performance. We've seen in the past what he can do. He had a really nice season back in 2022 and early 2023, so he looks like he's back on track, but he's going to have to face a stablemate National Treasure as well as some others, and I think with him, it'll be interesting to see the tactics. He can be very forward, but we saw him last time out. He sat just off the pace, and against this group, he could be forward once again, or we could see those similar tactics. Next up is Derma Sotogake, who we saw was the runner-up in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic, and it was really nice to see that performance from him, especially off the long layoff. We had seen him prior in the Kentucky Derby, where he finished 6th. He had a little bit of a troubled trip, to say the last, but nonetheless, but I think looking at him, he's shipped well in the past. He's run well fresh off the layoff, and he's going to have to do that again here, but his resume, he's put in some really big performances. Nice to see that one locally in the U.S., but also in Japan. Hoist the Gold is up next for Dallas Stewart, and he's going to be part of the pace. You go back to that race 2 starts back in the Cigar Mile, he rattled off wicked fractions, and I do think the track played to speed, especially that off track that was muddy in that day, but he got a 109 Beyer speed figure. They tried the same thing in the Pegasus World Cup, and he tired late. He was well defeated by 11 lengths, but they're going to take a shot with him here. At his best, could he maybe get a sliver? Maybe, just because he is so fast, but I think there's going to be a bunch of pace in here, and the concern is off his most recent, is he going to tire once again? Isolate is up next. Has been a winner in those last 2 performances, and really, really nice performances, both in Maidan, and I think looking at the 2, while maybe visually the Godolphin Mile was a bit more impressive, I think you look at his last performance on December 22nd, and I think it's equally impressive, or maybe a tad more impressive, knowing that he hadn't raced in so many months and was able to perform at a good level again. He's been very consistent throughout his career. It's interesting to see the tracks that he's run at and where he's ended up, and I think with him, he's won his last two with ease, and I think he's going to be a price in this spot just with those other names in here, and I wouldn't be afraid to use him underneath. He's lightly raced for a 6-year-old, but he shows up just about every time, and it doesn't matter where he is. He's a consistent type, so I like him at a little bit of a price. Lemon Pop's up next, a winner last time out in a Group 1 event over in Japan, and 2 starts back, he was able to win a stakes race, and he didn't win it. He just easily won it by 25 lengths. Last time he went off as the favorite, only won by a length and a quarter. And with these sorts of horses, I mean, he is consistent. He's 10 for 14 in his career. He did race, though, last year in the Dubai Golden Shaheen and didn't fare too well in that event. Sibelius won that, Switzerland second, and Goodnight third. My concern with him is just his best races have been in Japan. I don't know if he's up to the same caliber as some others in here. Move to the rival on his outside, Meisho Hario. Probably butchered the name on that one. 5th last time out in a Group 1 event. That was in Japan. Another one here, as we see these Japanese runners have been dominant, and a lot has been with the breeding program. They've put a lot more money in their stock, and they certainly want to be able to race on these big days, and they have the quality to do so. Now, he's fared okay in Group 1 events in the past. His most recent showing, though, not his best. He didn't take a lot of love in that spot, and to me, just some of his other kind of horses coming from Japan are a little bit more enticing, but he's the son of Pyro, who's 6 for 14 in his career. And next we'll move to National Treasure, and we'll show a replay of his most recent win in the Pegasus World Cup. And I will be very blunt. I doubted him in this race. I had concerns just knowing that he only had 2 wins prior to this, that being the Preakness and his maiden score. And I thought in the Preakness, he had everything go his way. But when we go to this race in the Pegasus World Cup and you see how he's able to do it, he barely prevails, but he set pretty swift fractions, and to see him still get the job done, he got a 105 buyer. Senior Buscador was flying late and got denied. I think, you know, National Treasure honestly is a better horse than I thought he was, and I wonder if it's just a development thing. He's 4 years old now, kicked off his season with a win. Can he take a step forward? That's the big question. You know, to me, he gets the benefit of this race staying at 1 mile and 1/8. I think that helps his chances as well, and we'll see what he can do, because I do think he is going to have some pace pressure here. Power and numbers up next. Look at that win streak, 11 for 15. Go down the page, you see a lot of ones there. This horse has been very, very competitive throughout his career, though. For him, he's going to get tested for class. He's had to tackle some big fields in those races, but you kind of look at those fields, he's had to face the same rivals. This is a fresh group of rivals. No, you know, these horses that he's been against, it's been the same horses, and look at those run lines. A lot of the time, the horses finishing behind him are always second best, or they're always third best, but you can't knock this son of Gervin. He's got a stacked resume and finds him in a spot where we'll see how good he is. Saudi Crown, another horse here for the U.S. connections, was a dominant winner at the fairgrounds last time out in that Grade 3 event. Went to the front as expected, but he drew clear really nicely. It was really impressive to see the way that he was able to do it. It looked easy for him. It was his first start since the Breeders' Cup Classic, where he pressed the pace and tired late in that event. So not only to see him perform that well, but visually that well, speaks a lot about him. But again, the pace is going to be quick here, and I think with what he's shown so far, the question is, can he really pass horses? Does he have the ability to rate? Is he comfortable to rate? I'm not sure, and I think he's going to maybe have to do so, just knowing that there are some faster rivals in this group. Now, a horse that's not going to be part of the pace, that's Senior Buscador. We saw that replay of National Treasure earlier. This horse was flying. He had one rival beaten early on in the Pegasus World Cup, and he just got denied by a neck. His connections were really impressed with the way he was training going to that event. They've decided to take a shot with him, and if the pace is hot, he's going to be flying late, but he's never shipped that far. We'll have to see how he handles that sort of thing, and he really needs the pace. That's what he's always needed. He's pace dependent, but he's got a wicked late turn of foot, and he's a hard horse for those reasons not to root for. 2 horses left to touch upon, that being Ushba Tesoro up next, and we'll take a look at this one's most recent victory. Now, finished 5th in the Breeders' Cup Classic. They took him back to Japan. he was able to win. Now, he did not hook a huge field like he has in the past, but it was nice to see him in the winner's circle. That race was at 1.25 miles. Curious to see him now return to 1.125 miles distance. I think for him, it shouldn't be a problem at all. He's a little versatile. He can go the longer distances, but he can also cut back, and he's got a really impressive resume like what we saw in this performance. And can't forget what he did in Dubai last year. He was able to win the Dubai World Cup, and he did it quite easily. So to me, he deserves a long look in this field, and so does White Abarrio, which is where we'll wrap things up. Richard Dutcher's had this horse for several starts now, and after that first start in the barn, he's now won those consecutive races, that being the Whitney and the Breeders' Cup Classic, which we take a look at here. And he just did everything right. He got a great trip from Murad Ortiz Jr. to sit just off the pace early and make that move, and he ends up getting it done. He actually went off favored in that field, but to me, he's a horse that's always had talent. He's always done well, and I think he's blossoming. I think he's actually getting better with age, so it's nice to see him on the track as a 5-year-old. I think in terms of versatility, he has what it needs to get the trip regardless of how things happen. He does draw the rail here, though. He has post 1, and he'll have to work out a trip from there, but he can be forward, he can sit just off of it, and I think that's going to be the tactics. I think they're going to have him sit just off the pace and make that one late run because, listen, he's been so close to the pace in those last 2, and it's worked out well for him. So that is the field for the Saudi Cup, and looking at the field, there's a lot of horses making that ship for the first time, such a big ship overseas, and was torn between 2 horses, and for me, when I looked at them, you're looking at horses like Derma Sotogake, you're looking at Ushba Tesoro, and even White Abarrio. I'll say I was torn between these 3 runners, and when it came down to it, I put White Abarrio second. I wanted to use him on top, but I just had concerns about the ship. Was he going to be able to handle it? Was he not going to be able to handle it? That was the question for me. So ultimately, I do go to Derma Sotogake as my top pick in this field. He's going to have post 13. And just look at his resume and what he's been able to do, how well he's handled the shipping and the races that he's been able to win. And he was just the runner-up behind White Abarrio. And I'm curious to see if he can take a little bit of a step forward and be able to take the Saudi Cup. So use him on top, White Abarrio underneath. From here, I mentioned a price. Isolate. I think this horse can get a piece in here at what figures to be a decent price. Has really looked good in those last 2. And then to round it out, Ushba Tesoro is my 4th pick. So it is a stack field. It's loaded. It's the Saudi Cup. Catch this race on Saturday. Best of luck.